Troubled Paradise is a story that I started to think about after winning Travel Photographer of the Year, the New Talent category, because I had funding to go to a place and cover a climate change related issue. And when I started to investigate the issue, it was climate change is very difficult to show photographically because you're looking at changes over long periods of time. So really most of the projects we were seeing out there were old photos compared to new photos. You know, look at this fjord the way it was 50 years ago and look at it today. And I was looking for an issue that was going to impact people, not just say that climate change is happening, but I wanted to show a place where climate change could be devastating. And so that's why I chose the Maldives, which are a series of islands south of India in the Indian Ocean. And there, each island, there's not one island that's more than 3 meters above sea level. So if sea levels rise, they're going to be one of the first refugees, we would say, or environmental climate change refugees. So when I went there, I also received 2 assignments from Time magazine and working on a similar part of my story. So what I did there was try to really encapsulate several issues, not just climate change. So the story there was not just climate change, but it was several issues. It was a new democracy, a new president, a country that had gone through 30 years of dictatorship, and all the obstacles that they were facing, not only climate change. You know, they have a problem with adolescents, young people who have no work options, high heroin addiction rates, related crime, and gang problems that come with that, and then a whole series of other issues that were really due to the negligence of the prior administration. So you have a President Nasheed who was trying to overcome many obstacles, but then on top of that has to face this possibility that one day, if the temperatures rise and sea levels rise like they are expecting, that these islands would flood and they would become a humanitarian. And his approach has been very positive. He's had a very uplifting message. He's approached it by talking about converting the island to be completely carbon neutral by using new alternative forms of energy. So he has a very unique approach to it, and I think it made the story all that more interesting and encapsulating. Well, part of that it came with the prize. So my expenses were covered getting there. I was able to work through a travel agent that the prize committee had assigned. And then part of it was a little bit tricky because it was a place where there's not a lot of tourism to the main island. There's a lot of tourism to resorts. It's a luxury destination, but it's not. In fact, they had laws up until recently that you couldn't. They wanted to prevent interaction because it's a very Muslim country, and they wanted to prevent outside Western forces from entering the island. So the resorts were on isolated islands, and the population lived on other islands, and you couldn't intermingle without permission. That has since changed, or is slightly changing. So it was difficult for me to get accommodations on the main island that were reasonable. But I did that through some connections and through some use of fixers and other help. So when I got to the Maldives, I didn't need a fixer because most of the people speak English very well. There were situations where I did have some help from some people who worked in an NGO, especially with contact with heroin addicts and some other aspects of the story. But generally speaking, I didn't need a fixer. People there were incredibly kind. It's pretty easy to photograph and shoot video, as long as you were, careful in dealing with the people. Well, I think the people in the Maldives were very eager to talk and explain what was happening there. I think in the past that wasn't the case because there was, with the dictatorship, they really went after people who there really was no freedom of expression, certainly no freedom of the press. That's opened up since the new presidency. So people were very open with a lot of things, but it's also still very conservative Muslim country. So there were certain issues that people would talk about that would be typical of a conservative place. Yes, I think he can, but I think he's going to face a lot of obstacles in the process. Like I said, the prior dictator, Gayoom, has his own political party, and it's the major opposition there, and they still have a lot of power. Nasheed has to reform the government. He has to reform the Supreme Court, the legislature, the parliament. These are enormous changes that are probably too much for any one person. But at the very least, it'll get them going in the right direction, and maybe in time they'll be able to tackle all the issues and create a real successful democracy in the Maldives.